People have been absolutely screaming about this new LLM that recently dropped, in our context today being GLM 5.2, and rightfully so, because it's been absolutely knocking out of the water pretty much every single competitor in the space, and even keeping up with much more expensive models for that regard. So today, I figured to show you exactly how you can leverage this new LLM that dropped to include it within your Claude Code workspace to make sure that you can run its own API token costs and just get a better bang for your buck when it comes down to making different types of apps or whatever you are doing within Claude Code. Not only that, but of course, we're going to go through exactly where and where not to use it, where is it better, where is it worse, and overall in general the picture and what's actually real, instead of me just sugarcoating everything and saying, yeah, this is absolutely the best, because of course that's not how life works. But before we dive into that, if you even know, if you don't know for this case in point, like what is even GLM 5.2, it's a new LLM developed by Z.ai, a Chinese company out there, which has absolutely been crushing it recently, ever since, America pushed the AI and RAM prices jumped up. Effectively, they've been able to create models that run a fraction of the price because it's way more accessible over there in terms of there. As you can see, it's running at a fifth of the cost that, for example, Claude Opus 4.8 would be doing. But, before I dive into all the numbers here, let's just go ahead and let's get you guys set up to this. So how do you actually do this? Multiple steps. First step over here is we're going to create an OpenRouter account. What is OpenRouter? OpenRouter is this wonderful website, which also did that comparison where we're going to be showing it off, which effectively lets you have some kind of interface with your LLMs where you can call them, integrate them within your workspaces pretty much across multiple different providers, and pay that per API tokens. So the only thing is like clicking on the sign up button, logging in through Google, and you're basically off to the races. So you're gonna get a confirmation. I'm just gonna log in here and get back here. After you've created your account on OpenRouter, the second step is obviously, as always, getting your API key. So first things first, of course, you're going to drop down the credits. You're going to fill it in as much credits as you possibly, want, at least for testing purposes and or forever. Depends on how much you like this. Pump in some credits, and then you're going to click on this Get New Key. For example, this is just going to be simple test. We're going to, leave the credit limit on limited. Expiration, we're going to put 1 hour. And then we're going to create. You can absolutely put your expiration date to whatever you'd like, because of course you don't want to constantly be jumping into here. The only purpose I'm doing that is for, someone not to leak it here. And I want to show it because I'm too lazy to remove it through editing and just save it within your chat or pretty much anywhere that it would make sense for that regard. After then, going back to this, you are going to have to save it to your workspace under, this hidden folder, .config, GLM key. If you don't have this within your workspace, absolutely zero issues. I'm going to show you a way that we can do this. Then we need to add a wrapper to, now depends on what your device you're on. If you're on Windows, it's going to be to the shell or this weird zshrc folder, which is effectively just a shell, but for Mac and or Linux. Then we're going to be using the openrouter.ai/API link, not the API/v1. This is an outdated link. And then you're just going to have to run in the console a specific command and then type in GLM. So instead of doing all this, you feel free to just take a screenshot from step 3 to step 6 over here. And you can just feed that into, your Claude instance alongside with this key. And then you can either voice prompt it or text prompt it. For this case in point, I'm just going to be voice prompting it. Hey, I want to set up GLM 5.2 within my workspace. I've pasted in my OpenRouter key above. You feel free to look at the screenshot that I've sent. These are the step-by-step, process that you need to take in a case in point to set it up. Whatever folders we have and or do not have, create them within this workspace and set it up. Let me know when you're done and if you have any other questions. Pretty much being it, you can now paste that and let it go. Now, I wouldn't recommend putting these API keys directly into the chat just because they're a bit easier to crack, and especially if you're trying to go after this longer term, I would rather than you take your own manual work and just create this new folder under your own workspace. So basically you jump onto the folder specifically within this ID. You can add new files, new folders, just add them correctly and paste them in manually just because of security purposes. But pretty much that beyond the point is going to be working now. And so for us not to be wasting time, let's dive into more concretely how it actually compares this GLM model to everything else and whether or not it's good in that regard and how better and or worse it is. So We have from z.ai themselves the blog post, which kind of tried to reflect this in a manner which we can obviously see through their testing. It absolutely blew past, Gemini 3.1 Pro, but that is a bit of an older model, of course. And then it actually was super duper close to Opus 4.8 when it comes down to, the frontier. And overall, when it comes down to, say, by this effort level that it explains, which is effectively just what was the score, some kind of a subjective score on how it performed the task, as well as the average output tokens. As we can see, inclined by the colors over here, we can see obviously that Opus 4.8 and 4.7 are really, really good at when it comes down to, especially Opus 4.8. But for the fraction of the cost and for the fraction of the tokens that it actually utilizes, it's very, very close to the score, high point being over here. As we can see, these models actually don't strafe that much from their high and max outputs. Specifically, Claude seems to get even a tad bit worse over here compared to GLM. But we can obviously see that it's not necessarily better, but for the price that you're getting and for the capability of running this in parallel, it's quite scary on that regard. Now, these other things I wouldn't even dive into. This is way more too technical on that front to be diving into, but overall, in a general, easier way to look at this through the comparison that OpenRouter compiled for us. Effectively, what we can see over here is that the input tokens are roughly, a fifth of the cost, and the output ones are, an eighth or so, even a bit more. When it comes down to the performance, we can see that the latency of GLM is way, way smaller than of Opus 4.8, meaning that it retrieves data quicker, which comparatively is depending on what you want to achieve here. So you're basically giving up a tad bit of quality for having the option to drive quantity in that regard. But you'll see once we actually run some tests later on through visuals and so on, you'll see that they're both pretty damn good because, of course, I've played around with this a bit. But yeah, when it comes down to, as you can see, quantization and max output tokens, this is the only kind of meaningful difference that they have, and that is that the max output tokens are way smaller on GLM 5.2. But looking at it from other perspectives, overall, especially over here within 3D, within ASCII art, specifically code categories, data visualization, game development, we all come close, very close. Even in some case and points, GLM would be better than Claude Opus 4.8. Now, of course, what do I mean by we're going to be able to test this? We're going to be testing this through these very similar kind of viewpoints, through a UI components, through 3D, through animations. Now, why would we be doing that? Why would we be doing that? Like, why does that interest us? Well, the thing is, once you get to this level of models that can perform like stupid level amounts of computing, just like these two can, and provide scores that are near human level at a blink of an eye, it just loses the point of trying to compare them to, say, the blog posts that they write or the code that they compile. Like, obviously, the simple code, they're always going to compile in a phenomenal manner. If you gave to both of these tools a task of, hey, I don't know, organize my inbox or create some kind of AI email drafter for me, it's always going to perform pretty much the exact same job. But the thing about it being like in the nitty-gritty details is something also that is a bit of a controversial topic, but it's a thing of taste, and it's a thing of how it actually creates the audio, how high of a quality we're trying to look at here, how much those nitty-gritty details we can find about it, which is exactly what we're going to be testing on through this model later on in the video. Okay, once it's actually done, you can see, it says where it created these key files, this live API test, yada, yada. Doesn't really interest us. How do we actually test this? So you're going to jump into whatever, depends on your device, but if you're on Windows, you're going to jump into PowerShell. If you're, on Mac, you're going to jump into your own respective one, and you're going to navigate to whatever workspace you'd like to work on. So for example, this one, this demo workspace one, is just a folder that lives on my desktop. You're going to be able to run effectively this command, which is just going to navigate you to it. Once you actually selected this very specific folder, it's going to type in GLM because that's how it's set up. After that, it's going to just ask you over here, hey, quick safety check. Is this a project you created or one you trust? Because Claude Code is effectively going to be able to, well, make changes on this folder, which is a typical thing. So of course, yeah, we trust this folder, and pretty much there we go. And now if you jump into here, we can actually see that, or what model we're currently running. So even though we are in Claude Code, we are actually running the GLM 5.2 model. And it's like, if I come in here and ask it like, hey, what model are you? I believe it should be able to tell us what exact model it is. But outside of just, asking this and creating a new context and working with it, of course, we are going to be creating comparisons. And as you can see, I'm Claude, quote unquote, but the model ID is actually the GLM 5.2 per the environment configuration. And this is effectively called a harness, meaning that Claude Code is this thing keeping everything in place, while the API usage billing of the GLM 5.2, which we just spoke about, is the actual model that's getting called instead of something. For example, if we jump back, you could change this back to Opus 4.8 or whatever, not on that front. But yeah, let's see what this puppy can do in terms of like, hey, let's create some comparisons and let's run it by. Alrighty, well, I went back into our, ID over here, and I created a couple of different skills just by prompting, which is effectively just going, Claude Code is now going to orchestrate, once I give it a couple of things we want to kind of test this across, different types of builds across both GLM 5.2 and Opus 4.8 to just kind of test the difference. So it already gave me like some kind of idea over here, like on, hey, we can show down some kind of 3D solar system. So yeah, surely, let's just prompt it. Okay, let's let one of the comparisons be that 3D solar system, which you mentioned. I'd also like it to be a bit interactive in terms of like I can change the amount of things happening on screen and so on. Second build that I'd like to see is just a typical website which describes how an airplane engine works. And it has a nice automation, not automation, but animation in typical how that process is conducted. The third one that I'd like to see, and this is going to be very patriotic of me, is a 3D animation of a city which changes when I click a specific button at the top of the screen, which is represented by basically a line which goes through different historical periods of this city. And I want this to be reflected upon Bosnia and Herzegovina. Go through the time periods that were in the Middle Ages, aka when Bosnia was just roughly being formed. Then when the Ottomans had control, third period being the last war, which happened in the 90s, and kind of, modern times. You think 3 is enough? You think 3 tests is going to be enough to showcase this? Nah, I think we have to do one more, right? And let's do a fourth test, which would be an interactive game of some kind, where I am sailing a ship over the sea. I kind of want to see how it generates waves and the rain. And there's no concrete point except me just flying around or sailing around, for that matter. It can be in first person. Alrighty, so those should be 4 different key points that it's about to generate. We're just going to push this through and we're just going to, let it work. Once it's done, of course, we're going to be, showcasing results. I told it naturally for a skill, just it's going to nicely package that all for us so that we can run it through. So absolutely, let's see what it does here. Alrighty, and seems like it's finished. I opened it up in the background, but haven't checked it out yet. Essentially, just jumping through the numbers. So what we see is it roughly took GLM 41 cents over here, and I didn't actually use the credits for Opus. I actually let it run through my Claude Code infrastructure. But if you are actually to take the numbers, it would have taken $2 for Opus. But yeah, jumping in over here, let's put this full screen because it allowed. So this is the solar system first and foremost. This is how Opus has it done. So as we can see, I'm not sure how well the streaming's picking this up, but it's really, really smooth. It's more than 60 FPS for sure on that. And we can, toggle on and off these planet name labels, as well as increase the simulation speed, as well as we can also increase the number of asteroids that are being displayed on that front, and of course the stars in the background that are currently happening. We seem to have some kind of little commands over here, like scrolling to zoom, right click to pan, and so on. And overall, it looks pretty nice. So let's see how Opus performed on this. Case in point. All right, similar concept from what I'm seeing. Simulation speed is also a thing. Let's put this into full screen as well. Simulation speed goes a tad bit faster than the GLM one, as well as we can also target orbit paths, planet paths, and we have the sun glow, which we can talk. So that's different. We can also have a pause button over here, which GLM didn't include, as well as a resetting view, which it's pretty much that. Asteroids also can get generated, but seems like star density doesn't exist, so Opus kind of missed a point on there. But that's pretty much it for that one. In terms of how a jet engine works, let's check this one out. So if we go to GLM over here, Okay. So we have different types of stages. It says if we press space, it's going to play, supposedly. I'm not sure what that means. Is going to, like, maybe automatically go through? Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. So I was just clicked off. But yeah, if we click, we can see how it goes. Doesn't seem to have any kind of animation functionality neatly integrated. So I think the only way to go next is like by clicking. But I mean, this looks really good in terms of, like, bypass ratio over here, what the blade tip is, what are the low pressure compressor, stage 3 or 4, high pressure. I mean, I have a strong understanding that I could understand actually how a fan works through this, honestly. Let's check out how Opus 4.8 does it for that regard. Wow, this also looks really, really damn close to the unique point I were trying to get at. We can even update the speed. Could we do that with GLM? Yeah, we could. Tour all. Is this like an animation type of style that it's gonna do? Oh, wonderful. Okay, so in my regard, Opus 4.8 also did a wonderful job on here, making an animation type of style when it comes down to touring everything, something that GLM for sure didn't do. But overall, in my personal opinion, GLM's does look a tad bit better, being completely real on the animation side, or in terms of, like, at least the graphics. But this one is also performing very nicely, and it actually included the animation, which was kind of the case in point there. Let's check out Bosnia for that matter. So let's see how GLM actually did it. The Middle Ages, Hilltop keeps watch over wooden hamlets. Stechci. Oh, it actually used the word. Yeah, for context, I am from Bosnia. That's exactly why I did this. But let's see. Ottoman rule. It actually put in, you just can't able to see it, but it put in the, like, specific years. It actually got the years completely through and through. That's very impressive. And because that's also a functionality I'm going to speak before wrapping the video up. But yeah, Empire of stone bridges and so on. Yeah, this looks awesome in that regard. And the 1990s war that happened over here, of course. Yeah, this is pretty much how our cities did tend to look, especially Sarajevo at the moment. And then modern day, of course, is bringing it up to slightly taller buildings of the same manner with the streets in the middle. But yeah, overall, it's pretty damn good. And when it comes down to the timelines and when these wars actually happened and when everything was occurring, it's pretty damn accurate. Let's see how Opus did. Already, so, or yeah, Opus. Well, that's a weird place to put a structure on, but surely gets the point across. They also have a very, very similar kind of integration here, but overall, Opus is way more, at least from what I'm seeing, bland right now. We have some Ottoman rule set. Okay, Ottoman looks really nice. Weird position of the bridge, kind of on the middle of the lake. Well, yeah, you can get the gist. It's a bit more foggy rather than GLMs from what I'm noticing right now, but it did generate quite a lot of content for us to see. 1990s war, similar case and premise over here. A bit more randomized where it put the buildings, doesn't really make sense, but surely still tried emanating some kind of smoke coming through the buildings. As well as it did a pretty good job on the city and actually got the bridge to work over water, but seems to get those trees up in the way. So again, even looking at GLM's output, GLM seems to have, even though it put, the same kind of structure on a hill, it seems to have been able to more clearly represent how this should look like. And in those terms also, it correctly put everything in its place roughly, like it didn't just randomly generate stuff. So that's also on that end. And now for the final case in point, the game. So let's check it out. This is apparently so which one is this exactly? So this is GLM 5.2 that generated. So it's a first person, a sailing video game where you can, go around and look around where you're specifically heading. And I mean, waves look pretty fine. It looks like a general Roblox / indie game. We seem to have some kind of, speed in the top corner, which we can adjust depending on how long we're pressing and what direction we're, heading. Whether or not rain's on or off. Oh, it seems to have a bug, so rain doesn't toggle back on, for example. That's a case and bug that we found. Alrighty, let's check out how Opus performed on this. Okay, a very similar type of fashion, different types of boats, obviously, and supposedly. Rain is on, view is helm, alrighty. We can recenter our view. Oh, and our speed actually falls depending on it, whether or not I'm holding the button and on. So yeah, I mean, typically, honestly, for this case in point, like, visually, GLM crushed it. In terms of, like, because we can't even see the waves, like, we're practically floating over here. But when it comes down to the functionality, like, Claude or Opus generally understood better in terms of, like, how would video games function and so on. But yeah, I mean, case in point made. pretty damn good tools. Yeah, and the last point I actually wanted to make was why I was super surprised on the Bosnia factor over here is that the only limitation that GLM truly does have is the context, aka web searching. It cannot perform web searches intrinsically, aka or by default. So you would have to hook it up to some other tool, such as perhaps Exa.ai, which is a wonderful web search that is built for AI agents. AKA, you pair up these two tools, like Opus natively has a functionality going through everything and doing your web search quite literally has a function for that. Whereas this specific GLM does not. But if you pair it up with Exa, which is a super similar thing, you have their API, pretty much sign up to the platform, do everything, paste your API key and say, hey, when GLM runs and I want it to perform a web search, then run Exa before and provide it with info. But in terms of, generating everything, it actually surprisingly well, but it picked up the years phenomenally. So I'm not sure how it typically did that. Well, a nice thing to be surprised about even for myself here. But yeah, don't want to take up too much time here today. I hope I at least brought that a bit closer, how you can leverage these basically lower tiering or lower cost models to just be more efficient with the work that you guys do in any way, shape, and form, whether it be through Claude Code, through just calling it via API, generating things through it, but very strong. And what I've managed to gather over here, that it's really in the nitty gritty details, like both of them performed really fine on that front. Both of them had specific use cases. Like, for example, in my opinion, GLM had a way better approach to just visuals. Visuals were very nice on that front end. Yeah, but outside of that, like Opus did a phenomenal job. Of course, it's one of the strongest LLMs that we're probably going to see in terms of 2026, unless something crazy drops, like, Fable or something along these lines, and so on. But yeah, it's wonderful. I hope I brought that just a tad bit closer to you guys in any way, shape, and form. If you are a business owner, of course, and working on some projects, feel free to, drop that booking down below, since I'll be more than happy to hear you out on whatever project you got currently going on in terms of whether it be integrating AI or in general any type of automation down there. Absolutely zero strings attached. Give you a document to understand where you can head with the build that you're trying to do. If you're not a business owner, then absolutely by every shape and means. If this video was awesome to you and if you're still sticking around, thank you so much for enjoying the path with me here. And in every way, shape, and form, if you have any kind of comment or any kind of question, drop it down below. We'll be able to resolve it as soon as humanly possible. Outside of that, if you found this video nice, give that, thumbs up down under on the video. Give me a big old subscribe if you found this valuable in any way, shape, and form. Really does help on that front. And of course, yeah, you have a stellar rest of your day now. And well, take care of yourself, okay? Gotcha. Bye.